There is a persistent tech industry misconception that quantum computers are being built to replace classical computers, discarding our current servers for a monolithic successor. Classical processors are structurally necessary for the transactional logic and serial instruction execution that run every modern database. Quantum systems cannot replicate how classical hardware manages real-world, enterprise-scale datasets. Instead, a quantum computer functions as a highly specialized coprocessor, a QPU. Just as GPUs revolutionized parallel processing, the QPU acts as an accelerator for specific multidimensional calculations. This means quantum capability is an accelerator module within a broader classical network. Treating a QPU as a standalone system ignores the basic architectural requirement for classical management. Enterprise architecture must plan for a hybridized future. Classical and quantum systems will remain perpetually codependent, processing datasets too complex for either alone. This schematic compares a standard classical compute stack to a quantum-augmented node. The data bus connects the classical CPU to the QPU. Instructions are packaged, sent across the bus, and the QPU returns its probabilistic state measurements for interpretation. Their operational domains are strictly separated. The QPU is utilized exclusively to map high-dimensionality probabilistic states. The classical CPU executes the overarching algorithmic logic flow and decides parameters for the QPU. If you attempt to use a QPU to run standard cloud server tasks, the constant translation of data across the interface introduces massive latency, negating any speed advantage. Achieving actual quantum utility in an enterprise setting is heavily constrained by the network bandwidth and integration latency between those classical and quantum nodes. Hardware developers are currently operating in what is known as the NISQ era, noisy intermediate-scale quantum computing. We have seen impressive recent milestones pushing past the 1,000 physical qubit threshold, but physical qubit count does not equal processing power. This diagram shows a quantum circuit executing gate operations. The core constraint is gate fidelity. Qubits are extremely sensitive. Even slight fluctuations cause decoherence and errors. By 1,000 sequential operations, the mathematical signal degrades completely into pure noise. That 1,000 gate threshold acts as a hard ceiling. It physically prevents the execution of deep, complex quantum algorithms, limiting modern machines. Raw physical qubit count is a vanity metric in the near term. Environmental noise is the ultimate bottleneck dictating enterprise quantum strategy today. Because NISQ hardware cannot run deep algorithms autonomously without losing coherence, researchers had to develop hybrid quantum classical workflows to sidestep the noise constraint. The gold standard for near-term utility is the Variational Quantum Eigensolver, or VQE. It is heavily utilized today in pharmaceutical R&D by organizations like IBM and Moderna to model molecular structures. This visualization maps the continuous feedback loop of the algorithm. The QPU is assigned a highly specific task, estimating the ground state energy of a molecule by exploring its exponentially large configuration space. The QPU calculates the expectation value for a given quantum state. To prevent noise from accumulating, it immediately offloads that result to the classical processor and effectively resets. The classical CPU takes over, running a standard mathematical optimizer to adjust the parameters, and feeds the updated variables back into the QPU for the next short iteration. By utilizing thousands of short, shallow circuits instead of one long, deep circuit, this closed-loop partnership achieves chemical accuracy without hitting the decoherence ceiling. VQE proves that near-term commercial dominance relies on optimizing the classical quantum division of labor, extracting value today by working around the hardware limits. That division of labor is temporary. Hardware vendors like IBM and Quantinuum have aggressive roadmaps aimed at entirely eliminating quantum noise by the late 2020s. The goal is fault tolerance. This requires shifting from relying on unstable physical qubits to building stable logical qubits. Physical qubits are bundled and stabilized together to form a single error-corrected logical unit. The engineering mechanism making this possible involves advanced error correction methodologies, specifically quantum low-density parity check codes, which drastically reduce the physical hardware overhead required for stability. IBM projects a critical industry milestone, delivering a fault-tolerant system by 2029, capable of executing 100 million continuous gates without signal degradation. This milestone provides the computational depth needed to solve optimization and simulation problems that currently take classical supercomputers months to process. At this scale, quantum hardware moves from a lab experiment to a backbone of industrial computation. That hardware evolution initiates the era of the cryptographically relevant quantum computer, or CRQC. This era begins the exact moment a system achieves fault tolerance. This animation illustrates Shor's algorithm executing on a CRQC. A stable quantum computer allows for the uninterrupted execution of deep, complex logic paths, solving mathematical problems that classical computers cannot process in any practical timeframe. This is the terrifying duality of fault tolerance. The exact same hardware breakthrough that unlocks complex pharmaceutical cures mathematically breaks the trust layer of the modern internet. A cryptographically relevant system may still be a decade away, but the security threat to enterprise networks is fully active today. This timeline graphs the harvest now, decrypt later attack vector. Advanced persistent threat groups and nation-states are actively intercepting encrypted traffic today, archiving it in data vaults to decrypt the moment a CRQC comes online. The prime targets are files with long-term shelf lives, proprietary intellectual property, biological health records, and classified defense strategies. A recent assessment by Citi quantifies the exposure of U.S. financial systems at an estimated $2.0 to $3.3 trillion in GDP at risk. Any organization relying on RSA or ECC encryption to protect data that must remain secret past 2030 is already experiencing a slow-motion data breach. The defense against quantum decryption relies entirely on classical engineering. Post-Quantum Cryptography, or PQC, utilizes classical, lattice-based algorithms specifically engineered to withstand quantum mathematical attacks while running on standard servers. This specification sheet outlines the formalized NISQ standards. The federal government has officially approved FIPS 203 for key encapsulation and FIPS 204 for digital signatures. Symmetric encryption, like AES 256, requires only larger key sizes to remain secure. However, asymmetric public key systems require a total infrastructural overhaul to integrate these new lattice-based standards. Aggressively adopting NIST PQC standards is the only mathematically proven antidote to the active harvest now, decrypt later threat. Global regulatory bodies recognize the timeline constraint. They are shifting away from publishing advisory warnings and are now mandating strict PQC implementation deadlines. Recent U.S. executive mandates require federal agencies to ensure PQC support is included in all new procurements, establishing a hard baseline for vendor compliance. The European Union has issued a coordinated legislative roadmap demanding immediate transition planning across all member states. The EU framework outlines precise deadlines, finalizing national implementation plans by 2026 and migrating high-risk systems by 2030. With these deadlines in place, an unmigrated network represents agility. This diagram models a crypto-agile network stack. It allows organizations to natively hot-swap cryptographic mechanisms via API. Classical and post-quantum algorithms can operate side by side, ensuring backward compatibility while migration occurs. Quantum computing forces a dual-edged infrastructure transition upon the enterprise C-suite. They must structure systems to capture the massive upside of hybrid simulation, while aggressively executing the PQC migration to defend their data. Whether an enterprise dominates the market in the 2030s or falls victim to a quantum attack depends entirely on the classical frameworks they deploy today.